it used to be the mentality in the house was, well, it's better than jail. Today it is, I want to change my life. And I won't say that again, that doesn't, one or two here and there, but they don't stay long because what we do is too hard. It is too hard to fake.
Thank you for tuning in to the Rescue Mission podcast. I'm your host, Jay, and I've got my co-hosts, Blake and Matt, with me today.
Howdy.
We are excited to have you join us. Today, we've got Murray from the 13 Step House. Murray, how are you doing today?
I'm well. It's not Monday anymore.
Amen. That'll preach. We are so excited to have you on. I've known you for a little while and have enjoyed getting to know you. And when it worked out to get you on the podcast, I was excited. So for somebody that's tuning in, they see the title on this, they think, who is Murray? What is the 13 Step House? Let's give them the rundown. Who is Murray?
I'm technically the executive director of the 13 Step House, which is a really fancy title to say whatever needs to be done, guy.
Okay.
Depending on the day, I might meet with an attorney or be in drug court, or I might be mulching the yard.
Okay.
So you just never know. Lifting heavy things occasionally.
Sure.
Yeah.
And what is the 13 Step House?
We're a men's recovery home. We're 12-step based. It's been around 55 years.
Wow.
Yeah. It started 4 men from Alcoholics Anonymous. There was somebody who had tried multiple times to get sober and just couldn't get it together. And they rented a 1-bedroom apartment in what is now our first house.
Okay.
The 4 of them sat with this guy 24/7. They took turns, and they read him the big book, and they worked the steps with him, and he got sober. So then they did it with another one, and then they did it with another one, and then it just kind of grew. And that was in 1968.
So what is a men's recovery house?
It's also got a lot of other names like Halfway House.
Okay.
There's a few others out there. Basically, what we do is it's a structured environment for guys to come in, learn and work the steps of recovery, the 12 steps of recovery, through AA or NA. We're generally, for the most part, because it started strictly as Alcoholics Anonymous program. We've now got a CA meeting. We had an HA meeting for a while, and it kind of died. We've got an NA meeting for the first time in 55 years. Started about 3 years ago. Okay. The 12 steps are basically all the same, no matter which program they are. What changes is the drug of choice.
Sure.
And quite frankly, that the difference is, do you like chocolate or vanilla ice cream? It's all ice cream.
Yeah.
The solution is all the same. So it doesn't really matter which program you work, as long as you have a sponsor and they walk you through the steps and you start applying them. But as far as the house itself, it just adds a little structure. We encourage some outside therapies as well. We work with the court system for some of the guys. We're not exclusive by any stretch, but the ones that come in through the court system, they usually are required to do some outside therapies. So we kind of like that, because that's it. And then so we encourage the guys that just come in on their own to do that, because sometimes we need a little outside help as well. Most of us have been through trauma and whatever else, other things that we deal with. We were earlier talking, before we started talking about mental illness and some chemical imbalances in our brain, and sometimes those are some issues that we need to deal with so that we can work a 12-step program.
Yeah. What's the big deal with the recovery group meetings? I'm going to throw you a softball.
Okay.
But why are you guys so passionate about these meetings?
It's where we get reminded who we are. Because I've got a built-in forgetter. Those of us in recovery, that it's, the longer we're around, the further that life feels to us. And so that reminds me who and what I am. It also reminds me about hope. It also allows me to be there for the new guy coming in. Because the biggest thing is about that keeps us going, it keeps us growing in the program, is being of service to others, is helping others. And so if I don't go to those meetings, I got nobody to help. Right. But if I go to the meetings and I've got a little time under my belt, or even if I get help from some of the new guys. Some of the new guys that walk in the door remind me of what it was like and how bad it was. So it does a lot of things for us. And the other thing is too, that's also where, like I said, for the new folks, that they can find a sponsor, which for a lot of other programs, they would call it like a mentor. Their job is to guide you through the steps. because you read them on the wall and they look simple enough.
Sure.
The actual application of that is it's simple, but it's not easy.
Sure.
And you kind of need somebody to guide you through that and to call you when you're lying to yourself, because that's a big part of our disease. Is we spend a lot of time not being honest with others, but most importantly, not being honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
We don't even know we're doing it. We've been doing it for so long. So that's what that sponsor gets to know us. In my case, I will tell you, my sponsor knows me better than me. I'll be struggling with something, but Nat can't quite figure out exactly what it is. And 20 minutes into a conversation with him, I'll go, "Oh, okay, I got it." I'm like, okay, great. And he'll go, "Well, you've talked about the same thing 6 times in 20 minutes. So I think that's probably what it is." And I don't even know I'm doing it.
So you already used the term, and it's definitely a stigma term, halfway house. I'd love to dive into that and talk about maybe some of the misconceptions people have about exactly what that is, as well as I think it's an outdated term that probably shouldn't be used as much anymore.
Is that the term that would be the one that you'd say, we don't say that anymore?
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Well, in the basic sense of the term, that's exactly what we are.
Yeah.
Because it is a group home, a group environment. Group home is also the other one that has that really bad stigma, right? And a halfway house implies this is where you stay and you have curfew and you have to do these things, and that's what allows you to stay. This is a little different. The guys come to us, and hopefully, and don't get me wrong, it changes. The disease is really sneaky. The goal is to change your life. The goal is to have a structured environment when we can't do this living on our own. This way you're surrounded by guys all trying to do the same thing, all with the same mindset, getting to share that experience with one another, because a big part of recovery, I still believe the opposite of addiction is connection. Because addiction is so isolating and we get so into here. I'm putting my hands around my head now. Sorry, I talk with my hands.
We'll get that video podcast.
Yeah, we'll get that out a little bit.
That connection with others is that thing that we're searching for. It's weird. In my first, I'm a retread in the program. I was sober for 7 years. I stopped doing anything for my recovery for like the last 3 of that, and eventually went back out, and it took me 7 years to get back. In that first round of recovery, I remember being at a birthday party thrown for me by my closest friends, and I was completely alone because nobody knew what was going on up here. And that's the one thing with the guys in the house, they can talk about those things that are going up here, and they get it. It's that connection that we've been looking for, that we've been using the booze and the drugs and whatever to try and find, that helps. That's like, wait a minute, I don't have to do that to get that connection with another human being.
That's great.
So it's all about the importance of that connection. Do you find that a lot of guys that come there aren't ready for the connection?
Actually, I would say 2/3 at least, 2/3 to 3/4 are.
Okay.
Now that does change because it's a lot of work. It's tough, and we hit roadblocks, and especially once we've got a little bit of time under our belt, and maybe we're working, and we have a paycheck, and we feel pretty good physically, and oh wait, there's a girl.
It's always a girl.
Or a car. I've seen it happen with a car.
Yeah.
And those are the things that once we get something, oh, that makes us feel good. Then that focus comes off our disease and getting those tools and goes on to something else, because that's a lot more convenient. And that's our disease working on us. It's part of who we are. It's our ego. It's all those things that the program helps us right size. Because, all those things are important. We just warp them and twist them into something that is unhealthy and that is not good. So it's about getting everything back to the size that it should be. And removing the things that are, and that's something that our higher power does, and blah blah blah.
I had a conversation actually last week with a relative, and they were basically asking me, like, what's the end game for these kind of things? What's the goal? It's easy to always talk about, well, they're in the steps, they're going through the process. You just mentioned a lot of people, you can be out of it for years and years and still relapse. What's kind of the hope that you guys have for someone when they've completed your programming, or when they're ready to go back into, I'm using air quotes, the world?
Yeah.
The hope is they continue doing the things that got them there. And that's one of the things that also, happens to a lot of us, is that once things get going good, we start taking credit for all of the things that are happening in our life and forget that those only happened because we did this. And then we stop doing those things because life gets lifey. And, then I'll go to that meeting tomorrow because I worked an extra hour today at work, or, and we start, those excuses start happening, and we stop doing the things that we need to do to keep us sober. It's in the program itself, so the first 9 steps are kind of, I won't say a one and done, because they're not, but that is the first time through. The 1 through 9 are tough and time consuming. 10, 11, and 12 are ongoing. There's words in there like continued and improved and carried, and that requires daily action. And the problem is that daily action, the further our old life gets away from us, the easier it is to not continue and improve and carry. So it happens, but the goal is that hopefully they continue to grow, and they continue to change, and they continue to come back and give back. And that's the other thing too, is that there is nothing that makes me happier than seeing one of the guys that have been there, and we're a 6-month program, but they don't have to leave at 6 months. They can stay until they say they're ready. And I've had guys be there as long as 2 years.
Wow.
But what I love is when, say, 2 years and they are going to something, they've got this great apartment lined up, or they've saved up enough for a house, or whatever. And then they start coming back for meetings, and they start sponsoring people. New guys in the house, and because suddenly the new guy in the house sees this guy and goes, wait a minute, if you can do it, I can do it. That's the kind of thing that we love. And that's kind of the goal of the program, is that we get better, and then we help others get better.
That's great.
What is it that causes someone to, for lack of better words, be ready for that change? Because I gave you an easy question. We'll give you a hard one now, Murray, because we see it here at the rescue mission. There's a guy that's been through the programs 2 or 3 times, and it's like something finally hits the switch, and they're finally ready. Do you have any ideas or insight from what you've seen to like what brings guys to the point of, I'm ready for change?
If I can answer that, holy crap.
Trademark.
Yeah.
Would you put it on holy crap?
Yeah. You know what? I call it a God moment, a gift of desperation moment.
Okay.
I remember mine, sitting in the Allen County Jail on a 2-inch vinyl covered piece of foam. And I went, I cannot continue to live like this. I am not living. I'm existing. I cannot. I will not do this anymore. This is. I don't have an option. This is it or die. And I will never say I was suicidal, but boy, I was pissed off every morning that I woke up and I was still breathing.
Sure.
By the end, and that moment, I think we have to have. And what causes that, how we get there, sometimes it's big stuff. Sometimes it's getting arrested. Sometimes it is a health issue. Sometimes it's nothing more than, I don't know, say a guy with kids, and one of the kids says, Daddy, I wish you wouldn't do it anymore. And they have that moment. Yeah. I don't know. I just know that once it happens, we have a very slim window to start working.
Okay.
Because that does go away. Because I had a few of those before, and I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And once we start working, then we've got some place to go. But yeah, that moment, and like I said, sometimes we get it, and I will have. I've seen it where the guy that comes into the house has had that moment, and he's working, and then he gets comfortable, and then we stop working, and then all of a sudden that's gone, and we're not ready anymore, because now the ego is starting to take over, and now we're starting to all those character defects, for lack of a better term, start to take over, and we lose focus on what we're supposed to be doing, and we forget how bad it was. Yeah, that's an
Yeah.
answer that,
Well-
boy, I wish we all had.
I think you somewhat answered. I really liked how you said you wanted to live versus exist. And I think that's a big part of what we see in a lot of those we serve here too, where you can see they come in and they're barely existing, if you even want to call it that. And when they commence and when they're going through our doors to leave, they're living. You can tell. They're smiling, they're happy. They just have a glow to them, and it's awesome to see.
Well, I do devotions for the program guys on Monday mornings, and this week we were just talking about the cost of what it takes to actually follow something or someone. You gotta put down some stuff, and if you're gonna start out on this thing, so I don't know. We might have commented on this, but we've talked a bit about what does it look like to get away from something. Could you talk about the other hand of that, of what does it look like to go towards something?
Yeah.
Like getting out of recovery, not just to get away from something. Because I think Jay, you touched on that, is, the idea that we sometimes help people to say no to something, but then they don't know what to say yes to.
Yeah.
And so they don't really have, Blake, they don't have a life. They don't have an addiction anymore, but they don't have a life. Right. So I don't know. What do you?
Well, I think it's like, kind of like anything else, is that it's scary. If the only thing that we really know is this life of addiction, where we're in survival mode all the time, doing something new, doing anything, everything is new. I mean, it was new to go to work sober. It was new to drive sober. Yeah. In my case, everything is brand new, and it's like, oh wow. And then you have people telling you, hey, you can do anything you want. You can, and I'm used to the other shoe dropping. It's scary, I was, before I walked in the rooms, if you had told me that, if you'd asked me if I was afraid, I would have said I'm not afraid of anything. Once I walked in the room and actually looked at myself, which is also scary, looking at who you are. Wow, that's because I didn't like that guy. I was afraid of everything. I was afraid of success, because if I did that, if I succeeded at something, then you would expect that from me. I was afraid of failure because I couldn't look that. I was afraid of being wrong. I was afraid of everything. I was afraid of people. I was afraid of being alone. And so much of it was contradictory. And the only tool I had to deal with any of that fear was booze. Today, because the program gives me tools, I get to read, I get to pray, I get to help somebody else. There's so many things that I can do to combat that fear. And that when my brain starts spinning, when the squirrel gets really fast on the thing, right? And there is a difference definitely between, I won't even say running from, but crawling away from, because for me it was really slow. So crawling away from something and going towards something. And at first, I think there's a middle ground where we're just kind of taking stock. So like in a 12-step program, that would be your fourth step. That's where you look at yourself, you look at the resentments, and you look at your behavior, and you look at all of those things, and then you find out. Then you get with a sponsor and you figure out what your part is, and and how to let it go, and all this kind of stuff. So I think there has to be that middle ground so that we know who and what we are, and then we can get an idea of who and what we want to be, and to then go, okay, what is that I want to be when I grow up? Because it's also really easy to just look at the outside and look at the job and the car and the girl and the thing, as opposed to what makes me happy. Because most of us have no clue about that. Because in addition to that, I was also really codependent in a relationship. So when I got sober, I knew what we liked. I knew what we did. I had no idea what Murray liked. I had no idea what I did and didn't like, what made me happy, what brought me joy, because I hadn't thought about that for so long, because whatever we did, right? So I think the going to thing is wonderful, but it doesn't happen immediately. It's a process.
I once had a resident tell me that there's a difference between sobriety and recovery.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yes, physical sobriety is not putting the drink or the drug in your body. but I can be stark raving sober. As a matter of fact, I was for about 3 years before I went back out. I was stark raving sober. Recovery is continued growth, and it's a process, and it's ongoing. Physical sobriety means you just don't have a drink or your drug in your body, and it's very different. Because recovery also implies that I'm trying to improve. I'm trying to, I developed a lot of, or maybe I already always had them in my disease, that took a long time for those things to go away. It's again part of 12-step program. I asked my higher power to relieve me of that. That's in 6 and 7, and I'm asking to remove in ways, or in what gets between me and being of service to others. And so I don't get to decide how and when and how much of those character defects and those things that I have developed. My higher power does, and so I just go. I try not to practice them, and I do my best to go on, and it's amazing kind of how it happens, and it happens over time, and other people tend to see it before I do. Yeah, I just derailed. Sorry.
No, that's what we're here for. That's the best kind of content on the podcast.
We always like when the rails go in a different direction than we
all
expected.
the rails.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I did have a question about recovery. You've talked about how people view it and that it's ongoing. But what's maybe one of the biggest misconceptions that you wish didn't exist about recovery itself, about going through the steps, about staying sober, in anything you can think of, where anyone you've talked to, you've been like, no, that's not really how it is?
That there's a finite thing to it, and we do it to ourselves, but especially folks outside of recovery that have very little experience with it, you'll hear things like, how long do you have to go to those classes for?
Yeah.
When am I done?
Yeah. So exactly. When is that supposed to end? And that's, and I understand that, because if you don't know, you don't know. That it's sort of like asking somebody with diabetes, how long do you take that insulin for? It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Or high blood pressure. How long do you have to take that medication for? Forever. And the cool thing is that, there's no cure, but there's a way to arrest it. And it just takes ongoing work, and it's no different than taking your blood pressure medication or checking your insulin on a daily basis. And that's probably more accurate, because not every day do I go to a meeting. Not every day do I do something, but it's different depending on what I need. But it's that check, like checking your insulin, check my spiritual condition. Because it's the disease is trifold. It's physical, it's mental, and it's spiritual in nature. And so my treatment of that, my fix for that, has to include all three. I'm not saying you can't get sober without treating one of them, but boy, you're cheating yourself, because it's so good when all three of those are checked in and worked on and improved. It is so good. It's so good.
What are some of the ways you check yourself? Like, are there questions that you ask yourself, or specific things you look for?
Sometimes it's well. So part of the 10 step is, it's at the end of the day. You review your day, and you look to see if you owe anybody amends. If you were wrong, and so then you set that to do as soon as possible, right? For me, it's a lot about checking about how my insides feel. If something's been eating my lunch all day, if my heart is going, there's something going on, and I need to figure out what that is. Usually I can figure that out by myself, and it's usually something that is something that was said or done either by me or to me that I'm not processing well, that I'm not accepting for exactly the way it is. And a lot of times it's my ego that gets in the way, and that's what's not doing it. Or sometimes I've really done something wrong, and I thought it was justified, and whether it's justified or not, it was still wrong. So, and sometimes, for me, the physical part, how am I feeling? Are things tense? Are things is there something I need to do to keep my physical body solid. And my mental, am I spinning? Am I where is all that at? And I do that as sort of an all three at the end of the day.
Sure.
Everybody kind of everybody's a little different. The nice thing is that the grid is laid out for you, and then how that happens, everybody does what works for them. That's the beauty. It's no two people. It's like, so. Also in 12 step, it's spiritual in nature, right? Higher power, and we use the word God a lot, but it's whatever works for you. And I know atheists that this program works for. They have found something, whether it's evolution or nature or whatever, that works for them. And a lot of folks, it's God. A lot of folks, it's the spirit of the universe. It's Mother Nature. I don't care as long as it works for you, right? And so. That connection with that higher power, that's where we actually get the power to not pick up one day at a time.
Yeah.
And the entire thing of the 12 steps is to help somebody find that power that's greater, that will help them stay sober. And so that daily connection where I'm looking at hey, how am I physically doing, how mental, all that kind of stuff, that's also where I'm connecting with my higher power, because that's something I never did before. And since all of this came from my higher power, right, that's a connection with that, and that's also where I ask for help from. So, wow, that rambled a lot.
Okay, it was good
Wow,
stuff.
that was total stream of consciousness.
That was good stuff. So how can somebody encourage a loved one that's going through recovery? Because it's not just, you just need to get it together and stop it.
yeah. Well, true. There's a really fine line between helping and enabling.
Okay.
I spend a lot of time so in one of somebody who's wants to get in the house, or who's looking for meetings, or who's in recovery calls, and I answer the phone in the office. It is a 2 to 3 minute conversation. Hey, how you doing? This is what you need. Okay, well, and it's when the phone rings and it is a grandparent or a wife or a grandchild or a mom, trying to get help for their kid or their spouse or their, that's a guaranteed 20 minutes or more conversation. And so much of it, and there's everything from, I'm done, this is the last thing, to I want to carry him to you on my hands and knees if that will get him sober. And there's this fine line between helping and enabling, and it's and enabling is something that, especially today with the drugs that are out there, just gives them one more shot to die. And that's, that's always been a thing, but today those numbers are insane.
Yeah.
And so it's a conversation that I have pretty much on the daily with somebody who is trying to figure that out of what it is they can do to help. And everything, it's all very much an individual thing,
Sure.
depending on the circumstances. What you don't want to do is give them permission and or resources to go out and use.
Yeah.
What you don't want to do is not be available to help. Although with this disease, we do a lot of bad things.
Yeah.
And sometimes people that are closest to us, they have to just step away for their own safety, for their own mental health, for their own thing. And that is absolutely acceptable. That is absolutely okay. Because when they get better, they want you, they'll want you still around and be able to be, you guys to folks to get through that.
Yeah.
So it's about taking care of yourself so that you can take care of somebody else down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful.
Yeah. Do you run into any struggles from the outside? Like, I know you have struggles inside the house, right?
Yeah.
Are there
there's certain things that go with the territory. Yeah.
You probably don't have as much of it as some ministries, but there's the, not in my backyard syndrome.
You know what? It helps that we've been around 55 years, because 55 years ago, West Central wasn't quite so affluent as it is today. And the Step House has gone through periods where things were not as good. Over time things go in cycles, and so there have been times where I know that was the idea of the neighborhood. There were times when the police were at the step house almost on the daily, in the middle of the night. I am sure, actually, I've heard stories from the HOA of when they did not like us very much. The good thing is today is that because of the changes that have been made in the programming, in the guys that are there, because it used to be the mentality in the house was, well, it's better than jail. Today it is, I want to change my life. And I won't say that again. That doesn't, one or two here and there, but they don't stay long because what we do is too hard. It is too hard to fake for very long. So the ones that are really just there, they just don't stick around for very long. So because of that, and because we take pride in the house, this is their home.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. The difference between a halfway house and a recovery home is the word home for me. And so it's cool that we're in 3 big old houses, so it looks like a home and not an institution.
Sure.
And so, there's yard to mow and flowers. We plant flowers every year, and then fall comes and my kitchen manager comes home with giant corn stalks to tie to posts and stuff, and pumpkins are everywhere. And because this is home for these guys, and it may be temporary, but for some of them it's an extended temporary. And it should feel like home. Home should be a safe and good, comfortable place to be, some place that you want to be. So that's kind of the goal. So we don't really get that much. Awesome. And the cool thing is also too, we've had a couple of nasty winters. I don't think we had anything much last winter, but the previous 2, where we had some major snows, most of the guys end up not working. So by the time they finish our shoveling our parking lot in the spring, they start doing the neighbors, especially for the ones that, we know that maybe are a little older, have a little harder time, just because they want to. That's all part of that whole giving back, and those are the ones that are working the program. Those are the ones that they don't mind having in their neighborhood.
Yeah,
That's great.
awesome.
So if somebody hears this interview and they want to keep up more with what you guys are doing, if they want to offer support, how can they do that?
Call the office.
Okay.
Will they talk to you?
If it's during the day, if it's in the evening, one of my house managers. I have 2, and one of them is always on if I'm not there.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I actually, especially I love running into our neighbors. It's fun, and just people from the outside community. The other thing that I really love that has happened much more so is everyone used to do all the, not just recovery mental health agencies were very almost cloistered. Like everyone did their own thing, and then they did their own thing over here, and these people did their thing over here, and nobody really knew what each other did or how to. And today we all kind of collaborate. We get together there's different organizations where we all meet, and find out what everybody does and how to help each other, and also how to resources, because sometimes I get guys that need more than I can offer. And so we get nowhere to help them or to send them. And I love that the helping organizations in this town are really becoming a tight-knit group. And I think that makes us better at what we do to serve the population that we're trying to help.
That is one of the things that we've found as we're interviewing people and talking to different people that we're hitting on, is that there does seem to be a
movement
that
towards,
that is happening. Where it wasn't before. Just like you said, which is so cool.
System of care, which is it was at Lutheran Foundation. I think we're meeting at AWS now. I think it's 170 different nonprofit organizations, churches, everything, and it's literally everything from like autism, big kids, recovery homes. Basically, if your thing is about helping people, you can be a member. And we just get to know each other and what they do, and they actually, System of Care just started Connect Allen County. That all came out of System of Care.
Okay.
They're amazing, and that's the thing. That's why it's the one-stop shop, because they're connected to 170 different organizations.
Yeah.
So that stuff like that. Also, DAC, Drug and Alcohol Consortium of Allen County. You know, anyone that is doing anything with any kind of substance abuse is welcome there as a part of that. You know, and there's a prevention side for the ones that, okay, how do we keep kids from doing this? And then there's an intervention part, which is, okay, how do we help the folks that are in it? Yeah. And then there's a justice side for, okay, who's the ones that are in the justice system? How do we help them? How do we make these changes? So they kind of tackle it from a whole bunch of different angles.
Yeah.
So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, Murray, thanks for coming on the podcast today. I really enjoyed this. I wish we had 2 more hours to sit here and just do it Joe Rogan style.
Because I can talk for 2 more hours.
Hey, you're in good company, but thank you for coming on today. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thanks so much, Jay.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Rescue Mission Podcast, we ask you to consider leaving a review, subscribing, following whatever platform you're on. We'd love to have you keep up with us and what's going on with the Rescue Mission Podcast. Thanks for listening.